Hello and welcome to another In Conversation with WLV Doctoral College whilst we are in lockdown. This vlog is going to be about conducting interviews online, which we hope will be quite topical at the moment. So my name's Dr. Deborah Curitan and I work in research development at the University of Wolverhampton.
And I'm Dr. Van Halligan, I'm Director of the Doctoral College.
So one of the things that we get asked a lot whilst doing our various development and training sessions from researchers is about conducting online interviews and what advice we would give people in relation to this. So Ben, we were talking earlier about this, and one of the things we first thought about was around the ethics and what ethics changes that perhaps needed to be made. So we know that if you're already you've already proposed to do interviews in your ethics paperwork, you may just need to make a few changes in terms of talking about the extra ethical implications of carrying out the interviews online. So some of those things might be around ensuring that the platform's a safe platform and that people can't come into the conversation that you're having, looking at where any data or any recordings that you make of those interviews are stored, and ensuring that they're accessible and that they're not likely to get lost somewhere or stored outside of Europe. So what else would you advise? Is there anything that you would add to that, Ben?
Yeah, I think that that first point is very important, which is if previously you've gained permission from your faculty ethics committee to run a series of encounter groups, interview sessions, one-on-one, whatever you've agreed to do, but then you're shifting them to online or even phone calls or something like that to get around the current disruptions, that it would be necessary to go back to that faculty ethics committee and to note that there has been a bit of a change that you're suggesting, and whether they can extend permission or whether they have further advice for you, because this in fact is the main point of call around research methodology, ethical clearance, data security, GDPR, all those kind of things. But I think, you asked me as well in terms of the other elements. I mean, one thing that you and I are very aware of is that, we can't necessarily make assumptions that everybody has access to working equipment or the platforms that we're using. And I think that can be quite a challenge, can't it? Because we may do exactly as you've asked, which is to, sort out the platform that is safe. But it may be that the people we're interviewing can't use that and only want to use another platform that may not be safe. So there can be, I think, complications which could engender a further back and forth with the ethics committee.
I think a lot of the platforms these days, you don't need to have to download software. So it could just be a link that people click and are able to then talk to you on their phone, either face to face or just as a voice call. So I think it's thinking about those platforms that allow you to do that, increases the accessibility for participants. And with regard to ethics committees, often going back to an ethics committee when you're making these sort of changes, it can be just a chair's action, as opposed to having to go back to a full ethics committee for full reconsider, for your programme to be fully reconsidered. So although it's important, it might not hold you up that much.
And indeed, this is something that could be written into the thesis,
Yeah.
That you talk about an evolving methodology, being flexible, getting around current circumstances and challenges, and therefore it was important to rethink the approach to interviews, to recalibrate the processes around them, and then to progress with possibly quality of data that you may not be as happy with, but maybe there's a bit more of it, so not necessarily to pretend that everything can continue as normal, but to accept and be upfront about challenges that you've met, but with some compromise. I mean, I think that's a very, important part of a thesis as well.
Yeah, I think it's that learning process, but also the transferable skills that this proffers are around adaptability, problem solving, and also shows that if you're able to do this, that you are mastering your own research program as well, that you're able to sort of make changes in the moment and be adaptable and flexible. And I think those are really important transferable skills. So we've talked about ethics checks, and we've talked about choosing a platform and the accessibility of that platform. One of the other things that's really important to think about is the setting for the interview. So we've talked about ensuring that that the recording that you make is safe and isn't stored anywhere outside of Europe. But in addition to that, you need to provide some guidance for your participants about where they might want to have the conversation with you, that they're somewhere private so that they can talk openly, that you are able to perhaps factor in some breaks if they've got childcare or caring issues that they might need to attend to. But also think about where you're going to conduct the interview as well. So you need to be able to ensure that you're somewhere that there isn't distractions or disruptions, that there's nobody overhearing the conversations that you're having, so that your space is completely confidential. So think about where that space might be. But also, like we said in the Viva video, think about what that space looks like and what that says about you. So that professionalism of that space, is it that you've got an unmade bed in the background or washing hanging in the background? Can you just move those? If that's the case, can you just move those out of shot, so that you present a professional approach? And I think if we look at some of the psychological research around professionalism in experimentation, although things like Milgram's experiments aren't particularly ethically well received anymore, it does show that if you present a professional image, people respect you as a professional. So it is important to portray that professionalism within the interview environment. So think about the space and place that you're going to conduct the interviews in, and whether that's conducive for you to interview, but also conducive for other people to feel comfortable talking to you.
Because I mean, there can be a lot of conversation around a development of a methodology, and how it therefore is very important that you perhaps take the candidates maybe onto a university campus to have a kind of professional space in which to encounter them and talk to them, or whether that's inappropriate, whether it's going to their home, their place of work, what that means, the nature of responses that you may get that are particular to the location in which you're encountering them. And I think that in shifting this online, it's not just necessarily a matter of saying, okay, we're now going to do it online, but that doing it online is another space altogether.
Yeah.
I mean, invariably it is perhaps you at your home, them at their home. And if you are after maybe a more formal encounter, an interview, that may be slightly more difficult if they're based in their home circumstance. I mean, I've seen some interesting commentary around discussion of university courses around kind of gender identity and how it's very important to get undergraduates to be able to talk in a sort of campus space about this, because sometimes they're saying things that they can't say at home, and may even be dangerous, physically dangerous to say at home. So that in piling all this back to the home location, it may raise a series of quite subtle methodological problems, which I think are definitely worth considering and engaging with as one rethinks amendments to a methodological approach around interviews.
I think this kind of brings me to the next point about, I think, ways of being able to test that in a safe way. So one of my postgraduate researchers did all of her data collection using online platforms, and that was about being able to talk to people over a wide geographical area without having to, sort of meet people halfway or bring people to the university. So through her work, she developed a really useful approach to building rapport. And I think basically she did a number of different stages in the online interview to start building rapport and checking people's safety. So she started with the first interview, which was about talking about the study, what the study was about, talking people through the consent form and collecting a few demographic bits of information. And that allowed the participants and her to kind of get to know each other and feel a little bit comfortable around talking and talking with the online on the online platform as well. So they kind of got used to that conversation. She then, and I think at this point, if there are going to be any difficulties with people kind of coming in or people listening or people feeling unsafe, they're going to arise at that particular point, and people can make a decision about whether they continue with that into those sets of interviews. I'm sorry, we've got a visit from my cat. The next, sorry about this. The next stage of the interview was that there was a second interview at a mutually convenient time, and that second interview, the participants have been kind of told the types of things that they were going to be asked to talk about and given some time to think about what it was that they wanted, what information they wanted to bring back. And that allowed people to consider what they were going to share and what they felt safe sharing in the situation in which they were in. On top of that, beyond that, I should say, the third level was that she then organised a third interview with people to go back and talk about the themes that she'd identified. So she did something called a member check, and she did that in a third interview that allowed people the opportunity to say, actually, yeah, that was what I said, or actually I didn't mean it that way, and it gave people a little bit more time to be able to expand on things. So if there was a situation where people couldn't talk because of fear of being overheard, they had the opportunity in the third interview to expand on some of the themes and give a little bit more information if they were able to do that in a different space at a different time. And then finally, the final checkup was via email with the offer of a further chat beyond that should people want. So an overview of the research findings was sent out, and an opportunity to talk that through should people want to talk that through. So by going through those various different stages, she built rapport and gave people the opportunity to reflect, to think about what it was that they were going to talk about, but also think about was it safe for them to talk about it at that particular time? And if it wasn't, for them to be able to talk about that at a different time in a different space if that was necessary.
I think the only other thing I'd add to that very complete overview is just this question of time, to factor in whatever time is needed. So if there are technological problems, if you lose the connection, if setting up is difficult, if somebody wanders in, if a fire alarm goes off, you know, all of these kind of factors, that you know that that's okay, you can step back, sort out whatever's going on and just pick it back up again. And I think that to schedule in as much time as you need is going to really remove any stress that comes from doing the online interview.
So basically, if you're expecting to do a 45-minute interview, factor in an hour and a half. And if you don't use an hour and a half, all well and good. So to conclude, think about the ethics and what ethical changes you need to make to your paperwork. To think about the space and place and professionalism of the interview that you're going to conduct, and find ways of layering the interviews that allow you to build rapport with the people that you are interviewing, and give them space and place to be able to add to the interview. Sorry, I'm being bombarded by my cat. Give them the opportunity. Sorry about that. I've also then had a power outage as well, which may have been my cat. So thank you for listening to us, and thank you for following us. If you don't already follow us, do press the follow button, because that will mean that you'll get an update whenever we release a new vlog. And we look forward to talking to you again sometime soon. Okay, bye.
Bye.